Hello, and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Layla, and today I'm going to do a Q&A video. I'm filming this video in the middle of a tropical storm warning here in Georgia. So far, so good, and fingers crossed that everything will be okay. I hope all of y'all are safe if you're down here in Florida, Georgia, down in the south, because right now it's just kind of nonstop raining. But figured I could get kind of comfy cozy and answer a few questions that I received on my community post. Now, this was going to be like a money chat / Q&A, but really I just received a bunch of questions. So I will answer these, and basically it's a random money chat, but answering specific questions. Oh, also this video is going up on Sunday, which is typically, as of lately, when I've been posting podcast episodes, but I do not have one to put up this Sunday. I should have one for the following Sunday, but to be honest with y'all, after that, I don't have another one lined up. So that is okay with me. I really was hoping for this to be a weekly series, but as of right now, that's just not what it's looking like. I think it's something that I will continue to offer. Like if people want to sign up and get free coaching with me and then allow me to turn it into a podcast and YouTube video, I believe I will continue to do that. But otherwise, if I see it kind of really continue to slow down, then I may just shut off the application. And, you know, it was fun while it lasted, and I can do catch-up sessions with the people that I have worked with so far. But aside from that, just not really sure where that's going. But this is going up in place of that. So happy Sunday if this is when you're watching it. Okay, so let's get started. First of all, I did see the question about giving an update on my sabbatical / entrepreneurial sabbatical, whatever you want to call it. Thank you, Connie, for your questions. I absolutely will talk about this. I want to make a whole video talking about the experience so far, but I want to do it after 6 months. So it will be a full 6 months after October. So I'll make a full sabbatical update video in November. I will say though, before I film and get that video up, that now that I've been doing this, being self-employed for almost 6 months, I don't know that I could ever go back to a 9-to-5. I mean, I could if I absolutely had to, of course, like I would push through the discomfort of it. But just thinking of that really, it's like sickening, I would say. Just thinking of how life was when I was working a 9-to-5 is so drastically different than it is now. And yes, of course, I was making more money and that felt good, but just knowing that I had to like commit to sitting at a desk and sitting in meetings and doing specific work that I didn't want to do for 8 hours or more of my day, I just don't know that I could do that again. So that's all I'll say on that, but I'll make a full video and absolutely address all of your questions. Dina asked how to overcome spending guilt. It's crazy how when you start saving, the only difficult part is to actually save, but once you start getting used to saving, all you want to do is save and spending becomes the difficult part. Yeah, I think I might have addressed this a little bit when I did my last money chat. I don't remember. I think I talked more about spending money that you had saved, like using your emergency fund and how that's difficult. But yeah, I think with spending guilt, that's something that you may never get over. And I've actually worked with a few clients who were dealing with this feeling of spending guilt. They were doing really well with their finances actually, and were in a place where they could probably spend, you know, $100, $200, maybe more on themselves, on whatever they wanted to in the month, but they weren't doing that because they've been in this like, not scarcity mindset, but just in this mentality of like save, invest, pay down debt, whatever their situation was. And something that seems to be helpful is creating a savings account specific to guilt-free spending. So yes, you would be saving for this spending, so you would be like spending your saving, but that seemed to help a lot with the shift around things. Like there may be some months where you don't want to buy anything, like you don't need to, you don't really want to, anything for your personal side of spending. So you put $100, $200 to saving, and you put it specifically in a guilt-free spending account, and then come Black Friday or, you know, whenever it is that you want to spend money, you can pull from that. And I think that's a great strategy because then it shouldn't trigger that guilty feeling, but honestly, that may just never go away. I do think that once you get to a point with your financial situation where, let's say you're completely debt-free, or you're at a point where all of your high interest debt is paid off, so now you're focused heavily on saving and investing, I think you should absolutely make room for personal spending. Like, I would say even increase your personal spending budget or whatever it is that makes you happy. Y'all know my approach. Like, when you're paying down debt, I want people to enjoy their life within reason. Same thing goes when you're starting to save and invest. I want you to spend your money within reason, but I think you absolutely should be, because tomorrow isn't guaranteed. And no, I'm not saying that, oh, if you go shopping today, that's going to be so happy. And then if something were to happen tomorrow, you would be so happy that you spent that money. That's not what I'm saying. It's just more like enjoy life while you can. And also, you are working, and work isn't, at the end of the day, it's not a fun thing. So what are you working for is an important question. Of course, we're working because we have to buy groceries and we have to pay for a roof over our head and save for retirement. But also you want to be able to enjoy things in life. So I think having a balance with that is really healthy, and you should not feel guilty about it. And I know I can say that all day long, and it may not help you, but I want to encourage you that it is absolutely okay to spend money on yourself, especially if you're at a point where you're in a healthy financial situation. Like, you've got your savings up, your debt down, that sort of thing. What was your experience with low buy years? Is it something you would do again? So I have a couple of videos on my low buy years. Especially after 2020, that's when I had a really successful low buy year. And I posted a number of videos during that and after that, before that, during that, and after that, where I explain how I was feeling and the accomplishments and everything with that. So I can link those videos down below, because that's probably going to be more helpful and definitely goes into more detail. I really liked low buy years. You definitely have to be in a great mental state to do that. Like, you don't want to be somebody who, if they feel restricted on spending, then they go and go crazy with their spending. Like, if you're not spending in a month and then the next month you go and spend hundreds of dollars, it's probably not best for you to do a low buy year. So as long as you're doing a low buy year from a positive mindset, like you are really eager to do something like that, then I strongly encourage it. Is it something that I would do again? Yes, probably not for some time, but it's absolutely something I would do. I have done it twice. The second time I did it was 2023. Was that last year? Yeah, it was 2023. And I wasn't as successful. I spent a little bit more on personal spending that year than I did in 2020. In 2020, I bought a planner, a notebook, and I don't know what else. I spent $100 something on personal spending, and that was it, which was crazy. 2023 wasn't as successful, but I definitely reduced what I was spending on personal stuff, and that felt really good. So it is something I would do again, and something I would love to encourage more people to do, because I think it was really helpful for my finances. So yeah, those videos will link down below, because that will be more helpful. Next question, how do you manage the stress of changing your spending habits or learning the skill of budgeting? So this is a hard question for me to answer, because I don't know that I felt stress around that. Okay, so here's the thing. How do you manage the stress of changing? So you can either have the stress of financial problems, whatever situation you're currently in right now, and it's probably a bad financial situation, or you can deal with the stress of learning how to budget and learning how to manage your spending. It's the same thing with if you are trying to be more active, or you want to lose weight, or you want to clean up your diet. You can deal with the hard part of being overweight or feeling really bad about yourself, or you can deal with the hard part of eating cleaner, exercising, getting enough sleep, that sort of thing. You have to, I think I've seen it before where it's choose your hard. You can do this with everything, it can be really hard to get therapy, or it can be really hard to be super depressed and not talking to anybody. There's always this comparison of you want to choose which hard you want to deal with. So same goes with that. I would say for myself, it wasn't something that I was stressed about. It was something I was excited for, because back in, 2017, 2018, I knew I had to make a change if I wanted to be where I want to be, which is, I would say, if I look back I recently posted a video of clips that I had filmed from back in 2017. And in that video, I was talking about how I was going through a quarter life crisis, and I had all this debt, and I was losing sleep. I was really stressed out, and I kept just bringing more negative energy to my life. And the reason that video came up was because somebody commented on it, and I hadn't watched that video ever since 2017. So I was like, oh my God, when I watched that, it was just surreal to see, because everything that I wanted, everything I said in that video is what is reality for me now. I became completely debt free. I increased my income. I am now self-employed. Like, it was just crazy to see that happen. So I would say at the time it was necessary for me to do. I don't recall being stressed about actually budgeting and changing my spending habits. It was kind of just like, all right, you do it and go from there. And then as I got started, it got easier. So once you learn how to budget, like, it's gonna take you, you can sit down for 30 minutes to an hour and make your first ever budget. And that's gonna be the hardest time, and then you wanna track your spending, of course, see if there's anything you want to adjust or need to adjust. But then each time after should be easier and it should take less time. So yeah, I can't say that I ever felt stress around that in particular, but I will say to help you, hopefully, to manage your stress with that, just think of what you actually want. Think of your future self. And if you start budgeting today and start changing your spending habits today, how far can that get you in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years? Just imagine that and be excited about it, because I guarantee you can get to that if you actually take your finances seriously. And I'm also going to plug myself here because, one, I have a ton of videos talking about sharing my journey, but also budgeting and how I have dealt with many things with finances. And also I am a financial coach. I help people with budgeting. So if you need help with budgeting, book a call with me, email me. I would be happy to look at your finances. It's my hobby and it's my business now. When money comes into your life, what's the first thing you want to do with it? Spend it, save it, or give it away? What do you think it says about your values? I want to save it these days. In the past, it was spend it. So yeah, I would say save it is what I prefer. I'm not a huge fan of spending large amounts of money, obviously. There's been something, I want to make a whole video talking about this because I've been thinking about how, I've said even recently, like, I don't need a lot of money to like live my life. And I don't need a lot of money to live my life, but I do want to be wealthy. I have realized, like, I want to be rich. I don't want any money concerns in my life whatsoever. But also, I know that I would do so much good with money. There have been times where I've been talking with a client or just, talking with somebody in my everyday life. And I'm like, oh my God, I wish I could just give them 10 grand right now, or like 5 grand right now, something to help them out and make it a significant amount. Like, when I've been able to I've done 2 of those giveaways where I give $1,000. And that feels so good to me. And obviously I can't do that right now too frequently. It's twice a year at this point, but that's quite a bit of my money, Being able to do that was so amazing to me, and it's just something that I wish I could do more of. And so anyway, to answer your question, I would say save it. That's what I typically first want to do. And I don't know what that says about my values. I really don't know how to answer that, to be honest. What do you think it says about your values? I think it's just that I've educated myself a ton on finances, and I know that saving and investing is the best thing for me at this point. So I don't know. What do y'all think? What does that say about my values? I don't know how to answer that. At what age did you start prioritizing investing? I started investing in my early 20s, but it wasn't in the right things. I was given advice that I shouldn't have listened to. I'll say that. So back then, even though it felt like I was doing the right thing, I would say I was not properly investing. I was not prioritizing investing. And actually, because of one of those investments, I lost like $7,000 in the end of it. And I opened a Roth IRA in my early 20s, but it wasn't in a good platform. Like, again, I listened to advice that I shouldn't have. So I would say actually prioritizing was hold on, let me think. I would say it was 2020. So that was 4 years ago. I would have been 27, maybe 26 is when I really started. And there were a couple of things that were stopping me from investing more. I was in debt, so I really wanted to pay that down first. That was, personal preference for me. I had a ton of debt and I wanted to get out of it because that really stressed me out. So that was first priority for me. And I was investing a little bit at the time. But the other thing that was tricky was the job I had at the time. So I was a fellow at the CDC. I was a microbiologist there, but because I was a fellow, the way that I was treated, as I wasn't like an employee there. So I did not get any benefits. I did get health insurance, but it was like I had to pay for it. And then I had no retirement benefits. I also, because the way that I earned my income, I was not allowed to contribute to a Roth IRA. I was able to get around this because I was making money on the side. So that counted as earned income. But the money that I was receiving from my full-time job did not count as earned income. So I had to be really careful about that. And at the time, 2019, 2020, I was not making as much from my business. It was like a few thousand per year. And so I had to be careful with how much I was putting to my Roth IRA, because if I put more than my earned income, then, you're not allowed to do that. So it's kind of confusing, but because of that, that really kind of hindered how much I was investing. And then, I really wanted to prioritize my debt. So all in all, I would say I was probably 26, 27. And since then, I have, maxed out my Roth IRA every year for the last 3 years. I'm hoping to continue that. I started contributing to my 401k once I switched jobs in 2022. So right away started that. And between that, some brokerage investments, SEP IRA, so on and so forth. So really within the last 5 years or so. What is a realistic way to save for your emergency fund, create 1 or 2 sinking funds, and pay down debt? So I'll first start by saying that there's sometimes that this isn't possible depending on your situation. So if I was working with somebody and they were like, hey, I want to pay down my debt, create these 2 sinking funds, and build my emergency fund, I would first take a look at the big picture of everything. So all their numbers, their debts, their savings, and their spending. Like, we would create a budget together and see what's even left over at the end of the month, if there is something left over. So if you don't have an emergency fund, we would definitely prioritize that first, because I think having an emergency fund is key to prevent going into further debt or just ending up in a worse situation than you currently are. So I would evaluate what the best amount to start with would be. Usually this is going to be at least $1,000, but for most people, it's a little bit more than that. So if you have children, if you have pets, if you own a home, anything, if you have a car that's older, anything like that, I would probably suggest focusing heavily on your emergency fund at first and getting to a more comfortable number there before even paying extra on your debt. But on the other side of that, if you have a little bit of an emergency fund and you're kind of at a comfortable place, but you have high interest debt, we want to probably focus more on that, and we would balance things out a bit. So maybe you're going to be putting a little bit extra to your high interest debt. I would prefer, honestly, the bulk of the focus to be on the high interest debt, and then maybe none in the sinking funds, that like no adding to sinking funds, depending on what they are. But we could probably find a balance between the two. So I think it's just, there's no I don't have a perfect answer for this, I suppose. I would say put everything into your budget. Determine a goal for each of those things. So if you're 1 to 2 sinking funds, let's say you want a sinking fund for your car insurance, how much do you need to put into your car insurance to make sure you have enough for your 6-month premium? That is a priority, right? So you want to be able to do that and calculate that out. So do a breakdown of, this is how much I need every single month to reach that balance in 6 months. And this could go for any of your sinking funds. If it's like, I am absolutely 100% going to be traveling in this month, then this is how much money I need over the next year in order to be able to book the trip by this month, And also you got to evaluate whether those sinking funds are even necessary for you at the moment, depending on if you have the emergency fund or if you have any high interest debt or any debt at all. And then same thing with an emergency fund, set a goal and determine the timeline of achieving that goal. And you may have to scale it back a bit. So if you're like, I want to pay down 20K of debt, I want to reach a 15K emergency fund, I want 1,000 in XYZ sinking funds, but then your income is like 60K, obviously that's going to be pretty challenging unless you really increase your income. So scale it back a little. That is absolutely okay, and figure out a more realistic number and then break it down by the month. So in order for me to reach a $1,000 emergency fund over the next year, I need to put basically 100 per month to your emergency fund. I don't know if that answered your question, Denise, but hopefully that kind of makes sense. I think honestly, for a lot of people, it's easier if you work on one goal at a time. And I didn't do that myself. Like when I was paying off my debt, if you go and look at my journey, you'll see that I was working on everything at once and it worked okay for me. But honestly, I think the key to being able to do that and actually seeing progress on all three of those areas is increasing your income. And that is what throughout the time of me paying down my debt, and I was also increasing my emergency fund and adding to sinking funds, I was increasing my income and also lowering my expenses. Like before I was talking about the low buy years, that year I was paying down debt, but also I was able to save more because I wasn't spending money on personal things. I think that year I was able to save like $5,000 to my emergency fund, whereas the year before I spent like $5,000 on personal spending. So as I always say, it's about widening that gap, lowering your expenses or maintaining them and increasing your income, and that's just going to help in general. But otherwise, you could absolutely just focus on one goal at a time. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question, but hopefully that is helpful. What do you recommend for tracking spending? Do you export your banking history or do you recommend an app? So I actually filmed a short on this recently. I can link that down below. I basically track my spending in real time. So after I make a purchase, I either log it. I log that spending within 24 hours basically. And usually it's within the hour. So I'll get into my car after grocery shopping or after I get gas, I just open up my spreadsheets, which are on Google Sheets. It is absolutely free to use. It's on a cloud, so I can access it from any of my devices. And I just log that spending. I look at my receipt and log that spending in real time. Or I'll wait till I get home. So that's also where I open my apps and like scan my receipt. I use Fetch, I use Ibotta, and that's it at this point. Upside for gas. So because I'm already looking at my receipts, because I'm going to be using these apps, it's also another time when I'll log my spending. And this is much easier the less money that you spend, because then there's less to keep up with. But basically, if I know that I spent money somewhere, sometimes I don't get to it within the first hour. You know, I could be out and about, grabbing a coffee, going out to eat or something, and then my day is filled, like I'm out and about. So the next day I could think of it and be like, oh yeah, I went and grabbed some food yesterday, so let me make sure I put that into my spending. That is what I do. Now I have several clients who do use apps. So YNAB is a popular one. From my understanding, you link your accounts to YNAB, which is you need a budget, and that will track your spending for you. So you can keep track of it in your own sheets if you wanted to, but it's also in app form, but I think you have to pay for it. I don't think it's too much, maybe $5 a month. There are other apps to do that as well. But when I work with clients, I ask that they at least track their spending every single week. So come in on a Sunday evening or Monday morning and look at all of your statements, log into all of your accounts where you've spent money and log the spending where you need to. So if you can get into the habit of that, that is amazing. If you can get into a regular habit of spending in real time, even better, if you're comfortable with doing that and that feels healthy to you, because I know some people get a bit too obsessed. But if you feel fine with doing that and tracking everything as you go, then it's a great habit to get into, and it gets easier with time because it's just like, oh, that's right, I spent money, let me log it. It takes 2 seconds. How to prioritize savings versus investing versus debt payoff. I feel like I kind of talked about that with the answering Denise's question with the emergency fund, sinking funds, and paying down debt. It just depends on your situation. There is no right answer. It depends on what your goals are. How important is it for you to be debt free? How much interest are you paying on your debt? What does your job look like? What does your income look like? How much do you want in savings? How much should you have in savings? Because maybe, like I was saying before, if you have children, if you have pets, if you own a home, it should be more. So that should be prioritized. It just depends on your situation. Really just look at the big picture, look at all your numbers on a monthly basis, budget, track every single dollar that you can, and then you can come up with a plan from there. And I will plug myself again. I would be happy to go over your budget and all of these things together, because that's really, if you don't know how to do that on your own, then I would be happy to help. Okay, a couple more. What habit that impacts your finances have you personally changed during the past 3 months? How has that change helped you? Over the last 3 months have been a little bit different, just because my income has been so much lower than I am used to, at least over the compared to like last year. And I would say that's just not spending as much on personal spending. Like I haven't really bought much. So it's just helped me to pay what I need to pay for. I feel like a lot of the habits that I have always impacted my finances in a positive way. Like I take care of myself, I meal prep, which saves me money on groceries. I track my spending. Like I've always had these habits, or at least I've had these habits for a very long time. So nothing has really changed over the last 3 months, aside from cutting back on unnecessary spending. And I guess more recently, something I've been working on is definitely trying to increase my income from my business, since that's the only income I'm receiving. So I have been working much harder on creating content, number one, and number two is reaching out to people, like being more salesy, I suppose, which is something that it's not a skill that I have. I don't like being salesy. I really like people coming to me, but when you're a business and this is the only source of income for you, you can't just expect people to come to you. I got to go out there, put myself out there, and that's what I've been working on. And that's been like literally the last 2 weeks. Okay, final question. What's something you learned from your partner about how you manage money? What's funny is I asked Sebastian, my boyfriend, he's been my boyfriend for over 7 years, by the way. I had asked him, what have I learned from you about managing money? And I don't know that, not to spend it, I suppose. He's a very good, he claims that he's frugal, but he's in the other room. I'm gonna say he is cheap, okay? And he knows this. I say this to him all the time. I say he's cheap, and I don't like it, That's not my style of things. I think it's absolutely okay to be frugal, but I don't like to be cheap. And there are some things in my life that are like non-negotiables, or I don't want to, I choose to spend more money even though I could save, because I don't want that cheaper product or whatever the case may be. But I think just in general, there have been times where I was like about to buy something, or I wanted to buy something, and he's like, do you really need it right now? Like, could you wait? That sort of thing. So I think just kind of the habit of paying attention to what I'm purchasing would be the main thing. But otherwise, I feel like everything I have taught him, which is okay. Like I got him to start investing in his Roth IRA. I got him to increase his 401k contributions. Like all these things with finances are because of me. But that's kind of expected when, I'm somebody who is obsessed with finances, and I am constantly learning about it, or I'm just constantly surrounded by finances, because this is what I talk about and what I do and what I learn. So it just makes more sense that, not everybody is super into finances like I am. But those are all the questions that I received. Thank you all so much for leaving those questions. I feel like I chatted a whole bunch, so I will have timestamps for everything, and hopefully, you can pick and choose what you want to watch, because I know that this is going to be a pretty long video. I am happy to expand on anything that I talked about, or anything. If you have any further questions, I would be happy to answer. But otherwise, thank you all so much for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next one.